Hey there, everybody. A little bit of GAA talk to kick off the new year. I forgot to mention on the football show, we haven't really mentioned it in any great detail. We'll give you all the details tomorrow. We have a live Six Nations show, which we're doing on Wednesday, 29th of January. We've decided to get out there and see the world. So we're going approximately 1.8 kilometres down the road to see the Ambassador Theatre, where we will be joined by Lions teammates and once upon a time foes, captains Keith Wood and Martin Johnson, together on a stage 3 days out from Ireland, England in the Six Nations. So it should be really, really good. We'll give you all the details tomorrow, but if you do a little search for it now, tickets are on sale and have been selling, so by all means jump on board and I'll give you more details tomorrow. So what's happening in GAA is the revolution over the weekend was not televised, but thousands of fans got to see a real-life 3D glimpse of the new rules in Gaelic football, inter-county teams testing out the FRC answer to our prayers. We have... how many of us would it take to change a light bulb? There are four of us in the room. One of us was at a match. The other three, we're just here to, ask questions, huddle around Donnchadh Boyle, who was at St. Conleth's Park. Hello.
Hello.
We have Conán Doherty. Good to see you again. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. I've just realised that I've been trying to talk about the Derry manager for months, but Kildare have a challenge match and there's four of us in the studio. Pick it apart.
And Conor McKeon. Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Good to see you. So there are no pre-season competitions this year of all years, as everyone keeps saying. So ad hoc challenge matches are happening. For instance, Donnchadh was at Galway 2-18, Kildare 17 points, which was a 7-point win for Galway. Louth played Antrim. Wicklow played the Dubs. Mayo lost at home to Monaghan 114 to 116. So these games are happening. I think Kildare are going to try and organise another one, they were saying afterwards, against Down potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
What's happening here with like the GPA and player welfare, and we're cancelling all these pre-season games so that players aren't playing this time of year?
That's probably a podcast on its own, to be fair. It's one of those sort of things that we love in the GAA where we make a rule and then everyone sort of quietly decides that we're not going to abide by it. So, there's the notion of no contact November. Brian McAvoy, the Ulster Council Secretary, was basically outlining what everyone else already knows, and that counties were flouting the ban on training in November. I would say more common than not. The notion of removing the pre-season competitions, I suppose, was to remove some of the pressure on players, but counties need the reps, particularly with these new set of rules, and that void was always going to be filled with challenge matches like there was on Saturday night in Kildare. That game was advertised as a fundraiser for the team training fund for Kildare, which is they're well within their rights to do. Previously, some of the O'Byrne Cup money went to a players' hardship fund for the Leinster Council. So I think they're only really moving the chairs around a little bit. It's a lot of optics and maybe not a huge change for the players themselves. They're still going to be playing loads of games.
Okay. So Cedral, St. Conleth's Park now?
Cedral maybe?
Cedral. Come on. What is it?
Newbridge.
Okay. Or nowhere. Galway 2-18, Kildare 17 points. So Galway won by 7. Floodlights on, decent crowd, new pitch markings. Did it look resplendent?
In a haze of, I suppose, Christmas boredom, I actually volunteered for this game. I said, listen lads, I'll go to that game. That's really important for somebody at that. We are going to see this. And obviously then the weather was coming. The game was moved back an hour and a half earlier. And I left too early, so I pulled in to the car park outside Newbridge 2 hours before the game started and wasn't suitably dressed and didn't warm up on the way home, I think, until the Apple Green in Lusk. So, but it was a funny afternoon, evening. There was certainly an air of anticipation, and there was a small bit of trepidation about it as well, because nobody quite knew what this thing was going to look like. I think everyone accepts that football had gone down a wrong road, but now that it was here, it was real, and we have to live with the consequences of our decisions now that were made at Special Congress and that most people were behind. And it's difficult to make any full, hard and fast assertions from what you saw. It had all the things that an average pre-season game does, in that it loses its shape in the final 20-25 minutes because so many subs are run in. There was more than a little bit of confusion at times in terms of the rules, what particular one of the new rules had been breached at the time. For example, Galway got done 3 times in a row in the first half, within less than 10 minutes for the 3-up regulation, as we're calling it now.
You said in your piece that the crowd very gleefully informed David Goff, brought it to his attention.
Well, that one actually happened in the second half because people were starting to get up to speed, and it was, the usual, yeah, so, and they were counting down. So, and I think at one stage,
what a grim way now for us all to watch a match at a game.
Oh yeah,
Still have 3.
Yeah, there's still 3, but
can't help but look.
Porrick Joyce was talking about it afterwards, and he says, like, players are terrified of seen to be lazy. So when their man goes, and they automatically go, and the moment they breach the line, technically, it's a 13-metre free. And
so, are there dramatic moments where your man takes off and you track him, and then you reach the halfway line and you just stop roadrunner style?
You say dramatic, but this has usually happened at a time when maybe the ball was dead and maybe there was a kick out or something like that. So there was a closing play, or a break in play, and the breach of play happens up on the halfway line.
So he wasn't.
So then he has to bring it up to the 30-metre line. So there's 10 or 15 dead seconds.
Okay.
And it kind of takes, and it's a tap over free. So by the time the free is taken and tapped over, there's nearly a minute of nothing except a tap over free. So it really sucks the life out of that particular moment in the game. Really sucks the life out of it. And as well as that, there was that element of confusion. No one was quite certain. No one was saying, "Oh, well, that's what that was." Now, David Goff was very good at making the various signals and running his hand parallel to the ground to indicate that there was a breach of the 3-up regulation. He was quite good at that.
Nobody watching David Goff do that knew what that meant.
Yeah, but I think we'll get there.
Oh no, we will. But like Newbridge was looking on, going, "What's wrong with?"
Yeah, and the press box was the same, and we're like, "Oh, are we all on the same page here? You know, is that what happened?"
So if he runs his arm along the ground,
yes, that was the
3.
That was the 3-up. So there was 3 of them in the first half. Like most of the new regulations got an airing pretty quickly. You know, the advanced mark got one, the 2-point free got one, and then Paul Conroy came on, and this is the one to really get your head around. Paul Conroy came on. He had 4 attempts on goal. All of them went over the bar. So he got 8 points for his team and finished the day's top scorer.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was very interesting. So Conroy, reigning footballer of the year, comes on, hadn't trained even with Galway, I think, in advance. But hey, talent is talent. And so kicks 4 kicks. We're going to have to stop saying kicked 4 points. Kicked 4 kicks for 8 points. Interestingly, Kildare did not even attempt a 2-pointer on the night. And by way of comparison, because the sample size is still so small here, Maurice Brosnan for the Examiner was at Mayo 114, Monaghan 116. And he said of the 2-pointer situation, there were no successful 2-pointers from frees or from play, but numerous chances. Mayo dropped a remarkable 10 shots short, 43% conversion. So Galway and Paul Conroy said this 2-pointer lark is good fun. Kildare didn't even attempt it. Mayo tried it and dropped 10 shots short.
Yeah. I asked Brian Flanagan about that afterwards, and it wasn't a tactical approach by any stretch. It just didn't happen for them. And probably, you know, they're probably coming from much lower base than Galway are operating at the moment. But the other thing about the 2-point arc is, and it became clear on the night, like it was Conroy's introduction and those 2-pointers that really sealed the game. And in a roundabout way, the goal is devalued now. And that might have been obvious beforehand, but when you see the game being played, and if you have someone who is a high percentage 2-point shooter, you're more likely going to give him the chance to convert those than you are to try and work a goal. And like, again, this is a tiny sample size, but that was just one thing that struck me from it. Why would you try and work the goal when you have someone like Conroy? And most of the top inter-county teams will have a high-class long-range shooter, and getting them on the ball to have a goal from there is a lot easier than trying to work a goal.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I like if you had to draw a player who, like literally, if somebody told you on the day that you found out about this 2-point thing, who's this going to suit? You would have said Paul Conroy. He was like the immediate one. Rian O'Neill is probably the other one. They're probably the 2 best long range point kickers. I know David Clifford as well, but he can kind of do more things besides. But I mean, some of the, not the scaremongering, but some of the people that are kind of beating a very cautious drum about these rules, a lot of it is about the 2-pointer and this idea that it's so beneficial now to increase your score by 2 points, and it's relatively easier to do. That the play, nearly every play is going to be designed around getting a 2-point shooter on the ball. I'm not sure there's enough of them on every team for to have like 5 guys lined up along the arc and make it impossible for you to defend. And I suppose then the next thinking is that, well, if teams defend the 2-point arc, which you can do because you can't go very far, you can't stray, you can't let the player go backwards because the further they go backwards, they won't be able to have the range. If you press up to the 2-point arc, there will be space inside. So it'll be interesting just to see how it comes out in the wash, because as soon as they did away with the 4-point goal, I think straight away you can say, well, this is totally lopsided. Yeah. A goal is much harder to work. It's only 3 points. A 2-pointer is much easier to work. It's 2 points. But because of that, I think you'll see the defensive systems is the big part of it. People, whatever, like the coach and minds are already looking at how are we going to get the scores. But I think the second thing to happen is that they figure out how they're going to set up to defend this thing.
The game actually doesn't look much different. It's just less bodies in the same area.
That's very good to hear, because I would hate if we were the generation, and lots of us, where there's almost an asterisk in terms of how we talk about GA, the old rules, the new rules. I would say Jim Gavin and the FRC don't want a big line in the sand. Oh, that was the old rules, akin to Premier League football started in 1992 situation. I think we want the past and present and the future to link together. So if it looks the same, that's really good.
It looks the same. It's just fewer bodies in the same area, so there is more opportunity, and that absolutely works. The other really interesting thing from the weekend was I made it that there was 4 goalkeepers used. I'd say half a dozen forays forward between the 4 of them. Now, that will change with the profile of goalkeeper and all that, but there's a big question mark over what type of profile of player you put in goals now, because the short kick out's almost gone, close to gone.
So what kind of range are the kicks pitching in at now?
Well, they're still working, but they all have to go out past the arc. So that the little neat dink out, a lot of that is gone because teams can set up and press from the arc out because they know the ball has to come at least that far. So your 70-yard boot might be as productive as trying to pick a spot in that very congested area. And then if you want to create your 12v11 with your goalkeeper coming up, he's going to have to be quite athletic to be able to get up that far and join, and he's going to have to be very good in the ball in those situations. So your goalkeeper who can find a dainty little kick out of last year and maybe is a good shot stopper, but might not be the best on the ball out to field, the value of that player now has changed. So, there's a lot of talk about what Michael Murphy's doing with Donegal, but you can see the logic behind having someone like him in goals to join the attack and be a playmaker as such.
So the word on Murphy, Declan Bogue, I saw is that who broke it? Apologies if it wasn't, but Declan Bogue was the first I saw it with the news that in recent weeks Donegal have been easing Michael Murphy back into games, not in the expected target man role, but as a goalkeeper. And you mentioned the 4 keepers in Newbridge didn't really make raids forward. Whereas interestingly, again, in the Monaghan Mayo game, Rory Beggan had 22 possessions, majority of which were in the opposition's half. So that point, these rules are going to be interpreted so differently by different teams with different personnels. And if you're looking for kind of a philosophical view from Brian Flanagan, the Kildare manager, he was saying that last year, although Mickey Hart and Derry might disagree, there was no risk with the goalkeeper going up because all of the opposition players were ahead of him, as in they had 15 behind the ball. So now he said there's 3 players behind him. That is a frightening enough proposition for a goalkeeper to be scrambling back. Joyce said keepers, their job is to be safe. So I don't know if Kildare and Galway will necessarily be plugging into the risks, but things could change very quickly, obviously.
I think it's going to be down to the person itself, the goalkeeper themselves, because I think Rory Beggan will be played and Niall Morgan will be played very differently than another goalkeeper who is known for their quality on the ball up the field.
The interesting question is if it becomes apparent that actually if you don't have a goalkeeper that gets forward, you're at nothing and you just need to go somewhere in the county and find one. And if it's Michael Murphy, that's fine. But so we'll talk to Brian Flanagan in a year. And I'm not even sure who the Kildare goalkeepers are that played on Saturday, but he may well say, listen, they're brilliant, they're shot stoppers, good kick, but I just needed someone who could carry the ball forward, because the last year has shown if you don't have a goalkeeper carrying the ball forward, you're at nothing, and that's one of the question marks over this season.
Yeah, but that was when it was 15v15 and you needed the extra man to come forward, where it was basically 15v14 because the other team had a goalkeeper on the line, so you needed to find space somewhere. But now there's going to be space even if it's 11v11.
Do you not think the 12v11 thing would be so tempting?
I think so, but I think to Donnachagh's point, like it's 3v3 with an open net at the other side of the pitch. Like I know Derry got caught against Donegal. That's why I'm shocked that Jim McGuinness is looking at the Michael Murphy thing, because he's the one who ambushed Derry. He said, if you're not going to play a goalkeeper, well, let's go for it. And it was his current goalkeeper, Sean Patton, that was able to kick the ball.
No doubt Michael Murphy's going to be a brilliant shot stopper.
Yeah, no, I'd say he's absolutely brilliant at it. But I think it's going to be important for the last 10 minutes. It adds a level of intrigue to that, where it's like, well, we need to get an extra man forward. Let's go.
Chasing a game, yeah.
I don't think in the normal sort of back and forth of a match, it's going to be a case of, okay, you get your kick out away now, let's build it up to the pitch, get 11 men up now, the goalkeeper arrives, because he can't touch the ball in his own half. You know what I mean? So he's like we were forever sort of looking at the Niall Morgan example or the Rory Beggan example, where they take possession of the ball and kick it over the bar. But 95%, and I'm making that figure up, but 95% or something like that of a goalkeeper's involvement in inter-county football as an outfield player was as an out ball. It was sitting behind the play, and anytime somebody was engaged by an opposition player, if they were going to press them, and that's why nobody pressed, and that's why everybody aligned now. But the difference now is first of all, the opposition have to keep 3 in your half. So that means they will press your ball carriers coming out of play. So do you want to be on the shoulder of the fellow with the ball and be caught with an empty net? And then, as Conán says as well, you have to be very structured in that 11, 12 11 to make sure you rotate to get the right player on the ball. So it's going to take a little time to set up. And to do that, you want to make sure you don't turn the ball over.
With your keeper out.
Yeah, because all anybody needs to do is kick the ball into the horizon. It's 3 on 3.
Until teams get comfortable, I wouldn't be surprised if their first reaction is to fall back on the edge of the D and set up defensively. I think as soon if we lose the ball from the kick out, from the opposition kick out, then we fall back.
I was interested. There's a little kind of analog. I was watching Brighton Arsenal the other day, and obviously, like, Arsenal's set piece corners have been so effective, and you've seen that a few teams have done it. Somebody did it in the Champions League recently, and Brighton did it the weekend, where instead of everybody defend their own box, they actually put 3 players quite high up the pitch, and it just means that Arsenal can't quite have as many players.
Saliba was one of the boys they had to bring back. He's been so effective attacking. Yeah,
because he's so effective, and like, it's the same principle, you know. Like, you have to be watching over your shoulder, and it will be the exact same with keepers coming up.
And Donnchadh, so leaving 3 up is obviously one of the big rules. On Saturday, did Kildare and Galway leave an extra man or 2 in defence? Like, was it 4 or 5 defenders versus 3 forwards, or did they go man for man?
In general, it was man on man. The big thing was there was a big rotation piece there. So Kevin Feely would have been midfield at one stage, then he would have been full forward, and he's very adept at both positions. But your 5, 7, 10 and 12, and Porrick Joyce talked about this afterwards, are going to have to do so much work. You could make a case for them maybe being your most important players in the new game, because they are
5, 7, 10, 12. The half backs and half forwards and the wings.
Yeah, they are the transition players, and they will have to get up and down. And they can move, you know, like, for the first time in the history of the game, we've restricted movement, essentially. So the 5, 7, 10 and 12, they can all get up and down. So the amount of work they will be asked to do will be remarkable. And they will either be rotated in and out into the full forward line to give them a breather, or a lot of them, and I think Pat Gilroy used to do it years ago with, say, Paul Flynn and maybe Brian Cullen back with that team. They barely got past the 50-minute mark for a long time, those two, because they were expected to do so much work. So I think that those 4 positions are going to be absolutely crucial in terms of transitioning the ball up down the pitch.
I'd see even, like, maybe eventually, maybe not this year, but another sort of development of that, in that your 8 and your 9 become no different to your 5, 7, 10 and 12. Like, they're all middle third. You know, like, having the advantage of a big fella around the middle, it might be okay for kickouts, but beyond that, you're looking at those, like somebody like Tom O'Sullivan, like Kerry, I can't see him playing cornerback again, given that the cornerback is restricted. He's now sort of a middle third transition player, and somebody like, even say, like Niall Scully with Dublin, like, that's the kind of guy that's going to be really, really valuable. That you're getting the ball, you're giving it, you're making yourself available, and you just never stop going for the whole game, because like, it's going to be a seriously attritional game around the middle third.
Do you want the verdict of the paying customer?
Yes.
This is Dara, who listens to the show when he walks his dog. Hey everyone, I attended Kildare Galway over the weekend. I must say it was a great experience for winter football. The crowd turnout was phenomenal, was it?
The stand was full, yeah, it was. There was a good crowd, and would have been more if the weather wasn't so inhospitable, I'm not sure.
Okay, stands packed to capacity. The newly refurbished St Conleth's Park looked incredible. Observations from the game, new rules implementation. He has numbered these points. The new rules worked well, although they did cause confusion amongst the crowd at times. For example, Galway failed to keep 3 forwards in their own half on 4 occasions, leading to Kildare being awarded a 14-metre free. Most spectators were unsure if the free was for dissent or something else. I imagine over the coming weeks, though, this will be ironed out at county level, although I do fear for the junior club games around the country trying to police this. Early in the game, several players seemed to challenge the referee's decisions, but after the ball was moved forward 50 metres at a time, this behaviour stopped, especially in the second half. What worked well, long direct play. Galway effectively utilised the long direct ball. They secured a number of marks, showcasing the potential for more goals in the future. Galway outscored Kildare in 2-pointers, significant factor in the game's outcome. Tactics, some hand passing persisted, but it was noticeably quicker, more direct, clear focus on getting to scoring positions. Overall impression, this was a highly competitive game, very promising first outing for the new rules. While players and supporters experienced moments of confusion, the game was entertaining and reignited my hopes for Gaelic football in 2025. Thanks for the podcast. I've listened to them all, out for walks with my dog. They're very enjoyable, Dara. Thumbs up from Dara.
Very fair assessment of them, and he touched on one, and it might be for another day, but like David Goff is there with his experienced team of officials, and he's fully mic'd up and wired up in a county ground that's perfectly set up for him to do his job. If the fella landing to do the league match on his own, that is going to be a major issue. And I've spoken to a couple of referees about this, and a lot of them are up for the challenge, but like the amount of work in spotting whether there's 3 fellas up in a Division 3 league match somewhere, it's remarkable. Like,
yeah, but hopefully it just sort of becomes part of the way we play. Like, it's not. I do think we've probably worked ourselves up a little bit. Like, you always make the point that Galway already played 3 up anyway. We're not asking teams to do something ridiculous that they could never have done before. Just keep 3 players up. And I can't walk into a club player around the town now without somebody being like, oh, well, I was thinking, if this forward went out at that exact moment and the halfback went forward and he's on marks, like, yeah, like, maybe that'll happen at some stage in the next few years, but relax for now. Like, it's still the same game. They're just trying to open it up a little bit, and maybe we'll start reframing how we think about it, because Pádraig Joyce is right. Players are afraid to let runners up the pitch. But after a while, that will start becoming the thought process of, well, when we get the ball, we're going to score more than them. Let them up the pitch. They're going to have an advantage. We can't do anything about it. But when we get the ball, we want to score more than them now as well. And like, it'll just become an attacking thought process.
But you even saw it the night of the trial games, with regards to like giving back chat to the referee, and it gets brought up 50 metres. Like, it's a Pavlovian thing. You do it once and you'll never do it again.
Brian Flanagan was talking about that. He said, I think this is a cultural change. Dissent is now a shrug of the shoulders. Players get frustrated, but they just need to accept it. That's the way it is now. We are in a different world, and we just need to apply ourselves more rigidly. This could be like an overnight fix to one of the great stains on.
Why did we never come up with it in the first place?
Yeah.
The big thing that we're all wondering is, how is the game going to look? And I suppose that comes down to how our managers going to set up their teams and coach their teams. And I don't think we'll see a true version of that for quite a while, possibly past the midpoint in the league. And part of that is, okay, on the one end of the spectrum, you have somebody like Jim McGuinness, who's an innovator and is, doing all the measurements and trying to figure out the most effective way to play the game.
And if you did have an idea in your back pocket, this is the year to hold it back.
Yeah.
Until it gets serious.
But like the rest of the Gaelic football at intercounty level has always shown itself to be a very copycat sort of a thing. So like, no sooner had Kieran Donaghy gone to full forward than everybody was trying their midfielder. No sooner had Stephen Cluxon kicked the winner in 2011 than every goalkeeper. So there's always a certain amount of people trying to figure out what other people do well and then copying it and adapting it to their version. And the analysts, I don't know how many people have a sense of this, but the analysts that are involved in intercounty Gaelic football teams, there's a lot more communication between them than you think. There's a WhatsApp group, as far as I know, that nearly all the counties are involved in. And to get access to the other team's videos, you have to upload your own video of your own game within 24 hours of the game. So that kind of swap of info, and then you'll get analysts that are tagging things and looking for trends and where are the vulnerabilities. So I think it will take a while of everybody fumbling around in the dark during these few challenge games, and even at the start of the league, before we kind of find that what's the average game look like under these rules.
The heavy hitters won't do anything. The All-Ireland contenders will keep everything in their back pocket until at least towards the end of their provincial title.
Yeah.
Because, if they're in for the All-Ireland, they're not going to be showing anything in their provincial competition. For the likes of Kildare, it's probably different because they've a real achievable goal of getting out of Division 3. So maybe they have to go after it a little bit harder and a little bit earlier to achieve what they need to achieve for themselves. But Galway, who have designs on an Ireland title, there's not much in it for them.
No. Well, I might get your preliminary thoughts on how the league is going to go and the year is going to go in a moment. Any other final thoughts on what you saw, on the understanding this is one game? It's a challenge match. Great that challenge matches are back, by the way. It's a challenge match. Nothing can be read into it. You seem to be cautiously, it still looked the same, felt the same.
Looked the same, felt the same.
Is that a good thing, though?
Well, I do. It didn't have the long, turgid periods of keep ball for 3 or 4 minutes. It didn't have that. That's not to say teams won't learn how to kill the pace of the game. They will, of course. But the descent thing is significant. The kick out, it changes the mood as well, because seeding the kick out is not really an option anymore, because you have to get out. So you have to be out past the arc. So this thing of tipping it out to the cornerback and the slow methodical build up, a lot of that is gone as well.
That was a real look at your phone moment.
Yeah. I have some time here. Yeah. So no, I like the idea behind them. I think media, supporters, referees, managers, players all need more, as I said at the beginning, reps. I think reps, because the first time covering a game there, you're sort of like scratching. So that's he's kicked 4 points, but it's actually worked 8. And so then, he's the top scorer. How did he do it? There's a lot of stuff that's counterintuitive in it, but we'll get there.
A small point. Does the scoreboard look exactly the same?
Scoreboard, we had a conversation with John Green, the Sunday Independent Sports editor, on Saturday morning, just saying, how are we going to write this? How are we going to cover it? And, there was that option of doing the sort of the Aussie rules thing, overs, behinds, goals, and we just said, no, we'll just keep it, because on every scoreboard in the country, it's still going to be 114 is still 114. How you get there has changed, but it's still worth 114. So so we just wrote it as like 2 pointers. Yeah. 4 2-pointers, if you like. So there's learnings, as we say, for everyone.
It's a rugby phrase.
We're going to have more of them as well.
The jargon's coming.
Yeah, the jargon is coming. That's the other law of unintended consequences. That the more restrictions and rules that you bring in, the more people will want to attach sort of, or even build a little lexicon around them.
Have you noticed in the last year everyone's saying peace all the time?
Oh, yeah.
When did peace become...
Jim Gavin was great for peace.
That came
the attacking
from...
piece.
It's everywhere now.
Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about the transition piece.
Yes.
And then we'll talk about the attacking piece.
Yeah, the enjoyment piece. And
talk about the fucking peace piece. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
That's my great... That went corporate rugby, and now I think it's...
Yeah. Stuart Lancaster loved that.
He loved the peace piece.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not a crucial point. So I guess where this will really catch fire for people is this month. I mean... In some respects, you can see why the pre-season tournaments competitions being gone is no bad thing, because the league is upon us so quickly. We're going to have bumper opening night Saturday. We will have Galway against Armagh, repeat of the All-Ireland final, Pearse Stadium, 5:15. We will have Tyrone against Derry at 6, and then 7:30, Dublin against Mayo at Croke Park, 7:30 on Saturday, with, on the Sunday, Jim McGuinness and Michael Murphy and Donegal going down to play Kerry. So never has... a Division 1 been so beautifully stacked. We got rid of Monaghan. Is that what we're all thinking? That's a joke. That's a joke piece.
the humour piece.
Yeah.
So on Galway for a moment, and I'll get your thoughts on some of the others. Joyce was talking, and you reminded me in your piece that he had said about the All-Ireland, we'll regret it probably until we take our last breath in the world. So this was more of the Galtier when France went out of the World Cup versus the Andy Farrell, we'll get on with it. This was like, this is really, really bad. He was talking after the game. 31 named on the matchday panel, the likes of Sean Kelly back, Matthew Tierney back, Paul Conroy, as we mentioned, back. No Damien Comer, no Shane Walsh.
Shane Walsh was there. He did a piece with us after the game. That's in tomorrow's paper. So
here's his piece.
Yeah.
So he said, we've got to mind injuries and keep lads on the pitch this year as much as we can. Decent squad in place. He said, we have 42 or 43 at training.
He had, I covered Galway Monaghan last year in the league in Clonus, and a patched up Galway team sort of picked their way to a win. And I'd have to Google it, but I think he had something like 18 out injured at that stage. So like the close season thing was still kind of new to everyone. I actually asked him about that, about, how are you going to keep everyone on the pitch? And he says, look, we're probably going to pull back a little bit on training, but then he says, if you're not picking up the odd injury here and there. Maybe you're not training hard enough. So there is a fine balance there. But like I'm not surprised they're carrying 40 odd because Galway were not alone in that injury count last year. It was phenomenal.
It's a tough slog to be man 37 in that squad, or 38. It's like toiling away. Walsh and Comer, are we still going to be talking about them and their bodies all year?
Tomorrow's Irish Independent will reveal all, Joe.
We've been embargoed.
No, he was very just talking about how busy he's been in terms of his schedule. He went from...
Who's this, sorry?
Shane Walsh.
Right.
Went from that brilliant performance in the 22 All-Ireland final.
Yeah.
Then I think the following January was he in the controversial Glen All-Ireland final. Back to Galway. Then they went to the All-Ireland semi-final again. Then he went with Galway to the years just gone All-Ireland final. So he's been an awful lot of football in the last 3 or 4 years. He's had a few breaks. I know he's in Australia at one stage and had a few breaks, but he has really put huge miles on the clock, and he's just talking about, I needed a break.
He's looked a shadow of himself ever since. That's just the brutal truth. His body just hasn't behaved.
He did, but if like the high watermark being that All-Ireland final performance, like being one of the highest watermarks we'll see. Like he was arguably man of the match that day. Clifford was brilliant too, but as on the winning team,
he sort of became an overnight household name after 5-10 years in the making. But like it was like, oh, this is the Walsh everyone talks about delivering on the biggest stage.
Yeah.
And against Dublin, to be fair, in the quarterfinal win, summer just gone, he was very, very good.
Yeah.
We got a glimpse of Walsh, but like he was coming off all the time, muscle injuries.
I think you could see even in his kicking in the All-Ireland final that he's fallen short. Like that's just for someone who has it well within his range, that's just somebody who's carrying a knock. But he was just basically talking about, I needed the time off, I'm building back. He's aiming to be ready for Armagh, but they were beaten in October by Coola, I think in the Dublin final, middle of October. So he's had since then until potentially the end of January to come right, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Joyce told us after the Connacht final last year that maybe this wasn't the only one, but the injury that he was suffering with at that time was kind of like an upper quad groin thing, so it meant the kicking off the ground was completely gone, and you could tell obviously by the All-Ireland final the number of kicks he left short. Like of all the things that have enabled body Shane Walsh is going to do, he's not going to be short with his kicking. So
I'm not meaning to be in any way critical of him. I think it's been really unfortunate that he
I thought you were
so
running him down, Joe.
It really wasn't. No, but I guess
the criticism piece,
Comer and Walsh, they're the conduit through which we assess Galway's chances.
And even actually that Connacht final last year, the best individual performance I think I saw last year was Comer in the Connacht final. Yeah. He was out around midfield, he was winning ball in the air, he was catching marks. He is genuinely unstoppable. Yeah. You just wonder sometimes that he's so kind of explosive and twitchy fibres and all the rest of it, whether he's more conducive to breaking down or whatever it is, because he has missed. Like Walsh, when he is fit, he is genuinely unstoppable.
So if those two are in their best form, for me, Galway are All-Ireland favourites. That's a major question mark.
Yeah, but those days for Walsh, not to run them down, but like they're rarer than. Like obviously his average is still very good, but it's not like that game against Kerry was one of the best performances I've ever seen. Yeah. And maybe that's why we look at him like that, but he doesn't do that every season, never mind every week. So it's.
You remember Rob Finnerty went off in the All-Ireland final early last year as well. Like the other inside forward, there's your full forward line, and that deprived them of one of their free takers as well. So they were really, really unfortunate. And it's credit to Joyce that he hasn't actually, because I've seen a few of the quotes and he's been very honest about having regrets and everything else. But I mean, if you lose your entire full forward line, given the importance of them to Galway, you could literally just sit there and point to that and say that's the reason we didn't win the All-Ireland last year. But he hasn't.
I think we were in this room doing the All-Ireland final preview podcast last year, and we were kind of musing over the question, how many times have Galway in the last couple of years had Comer and Walsh fully fit and available? It's rare, I would say. Now, only the Galway S&C or physio can answer that question truly, but I would say it's been very rare. And in Walsh's quotes in tomorrow's paper, that would back that up. He's sort of been bandaged up, he said, for the last while.
Chronic, yeah, you can tell.
The big thing with Galway as well, and I wouldn't sort of be inclined to overlook it, is that Cian O'Neill was hugely important to what they've done the last few years. Like as a coach, as a strategist, you can see players coming over to him on the line and he's giving them the information. And I think they'll miss him more than people fully give it credit for,
Okay. So Galway Armagh is Pearse Stadium on that Saturday. Like I said, Dublin Mayo, Croke Park, Tyrone against Derry, and Kerry Donegal. Who are people, we can't talk about everyone, tipping to win? Who their demands, we touch on them right now in the most open All-Ireland Championship that most of us can remember?
I think we're all really curious about Donegal. I think we were curious anyway, year two, what can Jim McGuinness do, and then to throw Michael Murphy back into the mix. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing we do know is that the Donegal we see in the 7 games in the National League will be markedly different from the Donegal we see by the time the business end rolls around.
Yeah, the league is always about priorities, you can nearly tell the teams that are going to go well in the league beforehand. And sometimes like a team doesn't go well for the first half of the league and then, it comes up to speed. And you always have to look at it in the context of what's coming immediately afterwards. So like Mayo, for instance, was it 2 years ago when they got to the league final, they played the first round of the Connacht Championship 7-8 days later. So like they're on a different training schedule to Dublin, who don't have to peak for another 8 weeks or something, until they get to a Leinster final and even beyond that. So it's you have to really sit down and think hard about a manager's priorities before you anoint a league winner or even teams who go well. And I think this year of all years, there's even extra kind of variables in there with the rules. As much as we sit here and we like to think of Jim McGuinness or whoever having, all these great tricks under these new rules to circumvent them or to use them to their advantage, I think there's a large degree of like trepidation from the managers that they actually just want to play games under these rules and see what they're about because they don't want to be left behind.
There is a squeezed middle sort of in football that the league means an awful lot to the people who could potentially lose their Sam Maguire status in the back of the league and the people who could potentially gain it on the back of the league. So they will have a very different plan for the end of January in towards the March-April time than, as we mentioned earlier, the All-Ireland contenders, because for them it's far less important than it is for those bottom of Division 2, top end of Division 3 teams.
It's a good point. When I asked who do you want to talk about because you're tipping, you very shrewdly, Donnchadh, said, I think Donegal are fascinating as opposed to necessarily on tipping them. Who are we tipping? Who are your All-Ireland favourites?
All-Ireland favourites? Great question. Jesus.
It's actually
I actually haven't even
I feel bad asking it.
I haven't even
The best question you've ever asked.
Yeah.
do you know what? I'd be really interested to see the odds because I don't know.
We did them here a few weeks
We
back.
did them a while back.
Get them all wrong.
Who were favourite?
You should listen to the podcast more often.
Yeah.
It was Kerry, wasn't it?
I think it was Kerry.
Yeah.
But what, like even Dublin, like where do Dublin stand now? Their midfield is gone. I think some of the more pessimistic Dublin supporters suggesting, I think it was maybe Paul Flynn, suggesting they're under pressure in Leinster. I don't necessarily buy that one, but they are in a tight spot now, in a place they haven't been in a long, long time.
Sorry, I've sat here quiet just waiting for somebody to bring up Derry. It's feeling like I wouldn't have to do it because I've had Conor say to me that Donegal were going to win it a few weeks ago.
Here's one for you. Not only do I think Donegal are going to win the All-Ireland, I think Tyrone are going to win the league.
Yeah, well, that's so insulting because Derry...
You can never go home again.
Derry have the best team in Ulster.
Do you want...
Armagh won the...
You want your odds?
Well, hang on. Armagh won the All-Ireland last year.
You won't like them.
Donegal are being tipped. Derry have a better team than the two of them.
We're up in the dressing room wall.
And it was only after the Donegal game knocked air out of their balloon last year that they exposed a crisis in confidence that was sort of there with the new management team that they weren't too sure of.
Yeah.
Now they've got a guy that they wanted. Now they've got Kerry's main coach, who Sean O'Shea's praising on the Hogan Stand steps as being the reason that they won the All-Ireland. This Derry team, if they got back to the same levels as they were in the league last year, are definitely...
And they're definitely going to win the All-Ireland.
Yeah. A few big ifs, but
It's fascinating.
the All-Ireland favourites are, everyone?
Kerry.
Yes, Kerry are the favourites. Dublin second favourites.
Galway third.
Galway are third. Donegal are fourth. Then Armagh. Armagh kind of 8-1 territory, and then Tyrone and Derry are 12-1. Mayo 16-1. And then there's a big jump to Roscommon 50s. It is really just those. It goes out several multiples after Mayo. So Kerry 9-4, Dublin 4-1, Galway 5-1. Donegal 6s, Armagh's 8s.
I would say that's the first time since since the advent of being able to check odds on a phone that there were 8 teams within 6-1 to win an All-Ireland. Because up until 2 years ago, everybody beyond Dublin, Kerry and Mayo were so long priced. You might fit a 4th or a 5th team to get in within 6-1. Yeah. But to have 8 teams within 6-1 was genuinely reflected.
4 teams within 6-1. Mayo are 16s.
Oh yeah, that's the end of that theory.
Yeah.
What are Tyrone doing
that bit?
level with Derry here? Because Derry were the second favourites for All-Ireland in April.
You can never guard against Tyrone deciding, let's win it this year.
Yeah.
I know.
They might just decide.
The reason that's rattling me is because I live in constant paranoia of that season.
Where are you in Dublin?
Where am I in terms of...
Where do you live?
Harold's Cross.
Well, like
Harold's Cross around there somewhere.
the worries that Dublin fans have.
Well, I actually have, like, I think they're the hardest of those teams to predict what's going to happen because they could be anything. You know, like I heard people talking about, you know, could be under pressure in Leinster, and like the Leinster question is less about Dublin and more about everybody else. Because like worst case scenario, Dublin are still in the top 6. They might easily be in the top 2. I would find it hard to like. I don't even know which of the players that were supposed to have retired.
What do you mean?
Well, like we know that James McCarthy and Brian Fenton are gone, but like it was reported Stephen Cluxon was gone. I'm not sure that he is necessarily. Like I haven't. There was talk about John Small. There was talk about
Mannion.
Nobody knows about Mannion and Jack McCaffrey yet. So there's a lot of questions over Dublin that we haven't actually had answered.
Okay.
And I think because of the schedule that they have, they might be on a slightly different timeline. You know, like for instance, going away to Abu Dhabi on a training camp 4 weeks ago, whatever Donegal did, wouldn't have made any sense for Dublin because I'm not sure that they would have had their squad together. But if you're talking about Leinster, like, you know, is there another team in Leinster that has the makings of a top 6 team? No, there's not. There's nowhere near that. So I still think they'll waltz through Leinster. I still think that they'll come out of whatever group they're put in the All-Ireland series. But maybe the difference this year is because there are more doubts about them and because they've lost at least 2 of their big leaders and their best players of all time, they might be more vulnerable to the effects of a bad league campaign. Whereas in the past, I think you could always just write it off and say, right, everybody's coming back at the right time now.
Yeah.
If they don't find a couple of players or if they ship a couple of defeats, I think they could kind of get into a spiral. So I know that's a very long-winded way of answering it. But I find it hard to be in any way certain about Dublin one way or the other.
Yeah, no, it's
Galway still needed a remarkable finish to the game to beat them last year. Galway put down a brilliant half hour or so to beat them, and that's what they needed to do to topple Dublin, who were far from their brilliant
Conán had
best.
that miss as well. You know, they still had the chances to even not lose that match.
Yeah. Although you got to think that is now Dublin without Fenton, without McCarthy, and Fenton was still excellent last year, so
Yeah.
that is tricky. Why is my instinct to just kind of brush by the favourites, Kerry, and go, no?
It's because there's nothing interesting or new to say about them. You know, like they're so... I was looking at this, like in Jack O'Connor's 3 years until now, very few players have actually come through onto the team. And I think that's actually more of a reason to fancy them for the All-Ireland because, okay, they didn't get there last year and they were beaten by the Dubs the year before. But they know as an outfit that if they're all at it, and if Clifford is on form, I think they're nearly the team you could hang your hat on the most. The Donegal thing is, you know, it's a bit of a
Jim McGuinness.
Yeah, it's all very, you know, black magic and all the rest of it. Whereas I think with Kerry you can be a little bit more certain. But like,
do you consider them a great team?
Well, I consider them possibly an All-Ireland winning team because I think they have the one forward in the country who could almost win an All-Ireland on his own. But I think more than other years they'll have to bring through a few different footballers. They've struggled in midfield since David Moran retired. But like with David Clifford, Paddy Clifford and Sean O'Shea, like there's 3 linchpins of a really, really good attack. So you should theoretically be able to build the rest of it.
Depth in general has been a problem for them. Like, you know, there hasn't been a huge turnover in bodies from, I think I did a piece last year, the team that won the All-Ireland final to the team that was more or less knocking around last year. It hasn't been a massive turnover, hasn't been that many new on the scene. I think that's been an issue for them, possibly an issue, and we'll finally get there. Been an issue for Derry as well. Like, you know, Mickey Hart went deep into it, into the panel, into the county. I think by the end of the league, off the top of my head, I think to beat Roscommon in Celtic Park in the last round of the league, and Matthew Downey came off the bench. He might have been the 37th player used across the McKenna Cup and something like that. So he went really deep into it. But, you know, are they have the 20, 21, 22 players who are going to play high-end championship football? I don't know. They certainly didn't. But prior to Mickey, I don't know if that has changed that much now. Maybe picked up 1 or 2 last year.
You know, and I just think Gallagher was extremely all the way. I don't think the depth was huge, but he was an 18-player man. Like, you know, I remember in Ulster finals, he'd make 3 subs and then make the same 3 subs, bring the 3 guys who came off back on the pitch again. Like, he was really working off a tight-knit squad. So Mickey Hart was right today. It was the best thing he did during the league was go after a bit of depth. Yeah. Maybe find 1 or 2 extra players. But yeah, the Kerry, I think they're missing Burke now as well, and Stephen O'Brien, who was huge from coming off the bench. Like that engine room that they really
Graham O'Sullivan is really the last player they brought through onto the team that was an automatic starter. And I think they'll need about 3 of them this year
But this year now they have Clifford with space, like which is something that he hasn't had, and he hasn't needed. But now he really can't double up on him because the other team's going to have an extra man anyway. I always remember interviewing Gareth McKinless of Derry talking about how he'd way rather play against Kerry than Dublin because Dublin just had too many forwards that could hurt you. With Kerry, he said it was very obvious. It was like they're just kicking every ball to him.
Yeah.
Even though he's still going to score, we felt like we could limit him more than we could limit the whole Dublin forward.
I think with Kerry as well on the big days, there's a psychological component. If Clifford doesn't get off to a good start or his marker wins a ball or two out in front of him or he drops one short, it's like opposition think, yeah, one of those days. And I think Kerry think, yeah, one of those days. Yeah, there's an issue with Kerry and Clifford. The reliance on him is actually bad for them mentally. You get a feeling on a big day when it goes a certain way early on and they don't snap out of it all that often.
The year they got to beat Dublin in the semi-final with Sean O'Shea's free and went on to win the All-Ireland, they really looked poised to take off. Like their age, like the Dublin thing to beat Dublin after so long was massive, and then to go and like a lot of teams beat Dublin or who have beaten Dublin over the last decade in semi-finals haven't gone on to win the final. But Kerry did it, and they looked like they were going to take off as a team. Their age profile and everything else, and Clifford was going to a different kind of space where just there was no real comparison, for somebody being so dominant as a forward. But they haven't since then, and I think you're right. Like it seems like their fortunes are too sort of entwined in how Clifford goes, and he's nearly the entire energy of the team. When he's on song, everybody is on song. And when he's not, they're kind of wondering, well, who's going to do this for us?
And I think a mentally strong team in Croke Park, good man marker, starts well on him. Tyrone, you know what I mean? Just like if Tyrone decide to win the All-Ireland this year, they'll beat Kerry and they'll shut down Clifford, and it'll just be, you can see it already.
I have a small sort of growing theory that teams have a good hard look at Paddy as well. I think he is the man that links and brings it all together. And we've seen a couple of times Conor McKeon had really good days in him. And then I think was it the semi-final maybe last year in that duel, Paddy definitely got the better of it. And when he's getting, we'll use rugby parlance, go forward ball, when he's breaking the lines, when he's carrying the ball forward, all of a sudden it all starts to run for Kerry, and then David knows where the ball is going because Paddy will feed him in the right places, and that really gets him going. I think he's a huge part of what makes them tick.
John Small did a great job on Paddy a couple of years ago in that.
Fighting teams go after Paddy. I think we talk about David an awful lot, and rightfully so. But I think teams know just how important.
Source, yeah. Okay, well that's Kerry, Dublin, Galway, Donegal, all interesting for different reasons, and nobody's talking about Armagh. It's a disgrace. No one sees a repeat.
I think they're quite like what they were last year, and it'll take a really good team to beat them. And in fairness to them, they were that much away from being back-to-back Ulster champions last season. There were 2 penalty shootouts from being back-to-back Ulster champions, and we would have been talking about them in a very different way if they had to win 2 penalty shootouts as opposed to lose them.
Yeah.
So they weren't as left field as people seem to think. They were definitely last man standing. But to beat Kerry on the way and to beat Galway, who took out Dublin, so
yeah, it was just because they had a habit of losing. It was like they were so close, and McGeaney was right to dress it up, but point to the fact that we were so close to winning all these games. We could have been back to back, but they weren't. They didn't get over the line. So you thought, are they going to get over the line? But so your point is interesting about Armagh on the Armagh piece, because we don't know what we've never seen Armagh as winners, as champions.
With that bit of swagger.
Now they've won the whole thing, and they're coming into an Open All-Ireland Championship, so it could be a completely different animal, or the same animal.
So Conor McKeon gave me Donegal
for the All-Ireland,
yeah. What say you, Donnchadh Boyle? No one will remember this, by the way, in 2 weeks, let alone 6 months.
I'm going to play it safe and go with Kerry.
Oh dear.
That's a safety piece.
That's
your go forward prediction.
I think this crash ball. No, I think the potential for David Clifford to make hay in the new rules is huge.
Swing, yeah, okay. Conán, if not Derry?
No, I'm not going to go with Derry. I'm going to go with Dublin. I think Dublin. Yeah, obviously the Fenton thing takes a hit, but I just think there's a lot of forwards and a lot of good defenders, which is what you're going to need for this game, and a lot of athletes.
Yeah. Well, isn't that great to get 3 different answers?
Well, who are you going with?
I want to read the Shane Walsh piece tomorrow. Donnchadh Boyle, Conor McKeon, Conán Doherty, thanks very much.
Cheers, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.